Hi, and welcome to day 4 of Summit Week. I cannot believe we're on the last day, but you are in for an amazing afternoon. There's still time to invite your friends, and if you have to step away for any reason, grab the full access pass so you can listen later. I'm excited right now to share with you this program that we're calling Navigating the Tension of Life. And if you think about tension is a necessary part of life. Just think about the pressure in your blood vessels. If it's too high, you got problems. If it's too low, you've got problems. But if it's just right, everything is going along just fine. So in life, there's going to be tension, and we're going to be talking about how to navigate that right now. I want to start with a story about a pressure cooker. So, I don't know if all of you have used a pressure cooker or know about it. The current pressure cookers are wonderful. I have an Instapot and I love it. It's safe, it's fast, it's just amazing. But in years past, decades ago, when you would use a pressure cooker, it was not so safe. And sometimes it would get too much pressure inside of the unit. And of course, it was a heavy metal unit. You would oftentimes have glass jars in there that you were canning to be able to keep meat or produce or whatever at room temperature for months or even years. So you would have metal, you would have glass, and then you would have the hot boiling water around whatever was in the glass containers. It was a potentially disastrous accident waiting to happen. And over years, there were sometimes in the news stories about a mom who had been canning and the pressure got too high. The canning device exploded, sending the shrapnel glass and boiling water out to hit her and whatever children were nearby, killing them or for sure disfiguring them and maiming them. So my mom had us scared to death of our pressure cooker. So when she would be using the pressure cooker in the kitchen, we would stay away and we would be so scared that we would be the little children hurt when this pressure cooker blew up. Well, that I grew up and I married a gardener and a hunter. So I would frequently be canning produce or canning venison or something like that. One day I was canning something, I don't even remember what now. And we were all just around while it was going. You set a timer and then it tells you that it's at the right temperature by having it has this little let me put it back on here. It has this little knob at the top that sits up there and wiggles and goes and it's just this little noise that's telling you it has the right amount of pressure inside of the pressure cooker. Well, for whatever reason, this day that little knob on the top started going and it blew right off the top. Well, I knew what that meant. That meant the whole thing was going to blow in a couple seconds. Steam was coming out the top of that little hole. I was terrified. And I screamed, "Dave, help!" And so my husband calmly walked in from the other room, walked over to the stove, turned the heat down, and within seconds, went all the way back. It wasn't screaming anymore. It wasn't buzzing anymore. It wasn't sending steam out anymore. He put the little thing back on and it went back down to just again. A lot of times what happens in our lives is that when the pressure gets too great, we don't know what to do and we freak out. And honestly, when you think about it, little ones, they totally show us this is how it feels. It's just all out of control. And when you're little, you just have no self-control at all, and you just go right into a just flying tantrum or tears, sobbing or whatever, and then we get older and we get so much better at this, right? Well, maybe not so much better, but we think we get better at it. But the reality is that until we learn what to do when the pressure builds, we'll always have the same problem. We will freak out. We'll make terrible choices. Like for me, I wouldn't have gone near my stove. I was too scared. I was just too scared. It would have blown up. But because my husband was calm and he knew the truth of the situation, He didn't have the same lies in his head that I had in my head, that it was hopeless and it was for sure going to blow up. He was able to just walk over and solve it. So that's what we need. We need to get on with Jesus, what he wants us to know about stuff. I just spoke at a women's conference last Saturday, and I often do this. I bring in a bottle of some kind of soda, and I start walking up and down the aisles of the ladies, and I start shaking it up, and I start saying, life is calm. And like this bottle of soda, when things are calm and you open it up, it's just and it's that nice sound and that nice fizz, exactly what you want. But sometimes, and I'm shaking this and I'm walking up and down the rows, sometimes it's not so nice. Sometimes things get really, really tense, too much pressure. And then I say, and if I take this off, what's going to happen right now? And everybody right next to me is like, no, because we all know what happens is if it has too much pressure in it, it's going to blow. That's what's going to happen. And we're going to get slimy, syrupy Coke or whatever all over the whole place. Well, that's exactly what happens in your emotions when you allow things to get too shook up. Then when you take the lid off right then, it's going to blow. And it's bad that way, right? Because then everybody around us, I always say, when somebody's I just call it a spewer, when somebody just lets it build up and then blows, what happens is they feel better because the pressure's off of them, but everybody around them has been hit by the shrapnel of our explosion. And we don't want that. We don't want that for anybody we love. We don't want that for strangers. We definitely don't want that from people we're trying to win to Christ. I mean, we don't want that for anybody. It releases the pressure, but it does not accomplish good things in the process. Now, the other option, of course, is you can get shook up and then you can stuff it down. And so we have the spewers who are like, just let it go on everybody. Or you have the stuffers. And these are the people, they won't release their frustration on other people. They refuse. So what they do without knowing a better plan is they stuff it down inside. These are the people that oftentimes get ulcers or get even other diseases because their body was not ever created to handle that much stress. And if you think of the bottle of soda, what happens is that if you shake it up enough times without ever taking that lid off, eventually it will go flat. It will go flat. And that's what happens to the life of the person who stuffs. Eventually their life becomes flat. It is not joyous because they've got so much junk pressed down inside that you're not really living. So the way to deal with the tension in life is to take that lid off upwards toward God. And I always say God is the only one that can handle all my junk. I don't think it's fair for us to think that our spouses, our children, our best friends, our mother, or anybody else should be able to hear every last nasty thought we have in our mind. Why would we do that to people? The reason we do it to people is because God doesn't feel real to us. When you have a good, close relationship with God as your loving Heavenly Father who would do anything to take care of you and help you, you will find that you are confident enough to give him your junk. And if we think about the story of King David in the Bible, David had some real glaring problems in his life. He was an adulterer. He was a murderer. He wasn't that great of a dad. He had some real problems in his life. And yet, at the end of his life, when God would compare the other kings to somebody, he'd always compare them to David. And he would say things like this about all of the other kings. This was a good king, but his heart was not for the Lord like King David's. Or this was a terrible king. He was nothing like King David. So David had this special place in God's heart. Why? Because when David would come to his senses, or when David would be losing his mind, he would go to God and he would let God have all of his junk. If you read the Psalms with an open mind, you will see that he just continually was honest with God about how he felt. Again, I don't think that we should be that honest with anybody about how we feel. And it's not because we're supposed to hide that or anything. I just don't think anybody else's shoulders are that broad. I think God intended for our number one core relationship to be with him. We take everything to God in prayer. everything, the good, the bad, the ugly. We take it all to God in prayer. We leave it with him. Just like, this morning, our trash collectors came and they dumped my garbage can into their truck and they drove off. That's how it is with God. We give him our junk and we let him take it away. We have effectively gotten rid of it all, but we've gotten rid of it all in the healthy way God intended us to get rid of it all. I talked earlier this week about my book, Flow Through Vessel. And in there, I go through the 4 R's. You recognize you got a problem. I'm going to blow. And then you release that problem to God. You give it to, you blow, but you blow to God. I gave my kids, when they were teenagers, especially, I gave them permission to respectfully say, Mom, I wonder if you should go to your room with God for a moment. I let my teenagers send me to my room. If they saw me losing it, they knew, A, that's not normal, and B, that's not how I want to be. And so they just would, and they didn't use it very often, but every once in a while, one of my kids would say, Mom, do you need some minutes with Jesus? And I would be like, actually, yes, I do. And in that moment, you want to do anything but take that advice. But when I would go to my room and lay flat on the floor and say, Jesus, what's going on? He would take my junk. He would fill me full of his love. And I would go back out and we would proceed. And that's how life is supposed to be, you guys. That's how life is supposed to be. It's not supposed to be us blowing up and throwing our junk all over everybody. That is so sad when we do that. We owned a retail store for 10 years and we had 12 departments. One department was the party department. So I became rather an expert at blowing up balloons, which is a funny thing to become an expert at, but that was it. I became an expert at blowing up balloons. And what I can tell you is there's a sweet spot. The pressure inside of a balloon, there is a sweet spot. And if I put too much helium in that balloon, boom, I had an instant explosion, instant feedback for too much pressure. But too little pressure, I didn't know, because at the time the balloons were flying. But the next day we would get a call. Oh no, we came for the wedding and all the balloons are laying on the floor. So I would know, oh, bummer. I didn't get enough pressure in the balloon. Some of you are resistant to pressure of any kind. And I just want to tell you, God has the right amount of pressure for you. And so you let him determine your pressure. And if you feel like you're going to blow, get alone with Jesus and go for it. He can handle it. In fact, he loves it when we give him our junk. It's one of his favorite gifts from us, is for us to give him our out of control emotions, our feelings that we just can't handle it. Another thing that absolutely must have the right amount of pressure in it is a tire. If it has too much pressure, it will blow up. But if it has too little pressure in it, you'll just be going along ka-thunk, 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 which is, it's a very fun way to live. So pressure is so important. I wanted to spend these moments with you, just encouraging you. There is going to be tension in your life. You are going to feel sometimes like, oh, it's too much, or I'm flat, it's too little. Go to Jesus. Let him take the pressure off and fill you up. Or if you're flat, let him fill you up from the bottom. And you are going to find that he is so faithful and that your life is so different because you're doing it with him, to him, through him, and for him. Thank you for joining me for this session. Again, below you can get a free copy of the Flow Through Vessel book and bundle. So I hope you'll grab that, and I'll see you in the next session.